From the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. I am Kari Jannise here with my co-host, my good friend, and it's been a while, but I am here with Mike Walsh.
Hey, Kari, it has. I genuinely don't know the last time I saw your face.
I know. I think it was the podcast on the saint display of the relics that we had here.
That's
the Sacred
right.
Relics
Father
podcast.
Jim,
so that was like 5 podcasts ago.
Yeah, that was Deacon Jim Holloman. Yeah, that was a great. Actually, that was a great podcast. I learned a lot that podcast.
That was, and we are back here now in my parish, but. Usually you and I are used to seeing each other like sometimes a couple times a week, if not multiple times throughout the month, and it's been a good month. So the only
time I've seen you with a little plug up front, the only time I've seen you is on your podcast show or your YouTube show.
Yes, and it's not really me; it's like me on a video.
It's you. Well, yes,
me,
but I get to
like
at least
in person, in the flesh. We're here.
I get to hear your voice at least, and you've had a really good run of shows, as a matter of fact.
Thanks.
The Youth Ministry Insights that are on our Talking Catholic YouTube page, season 4.
I know.
Matter of fact,
I'm over 30 episodes deep.
I know.
It's been good. Yeah, it's funny. The next few, this past one, and then the next few, I start to get a little like kind of silly, goofy, but like in a fun way. Like I'm like, all right, I got all the good content in here. Now it's time to loosen up and give some of the like. I mean, not the, all the cards. Yeah, the lighthearted stuff, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, some of these things I'm doing are just goofy, but it's fun.
Well, can you talk about like some of the episodes that have been out?
Yeah,
in the last couple of weeks?
Let's see. One just came out recently. I'm working in schools, working with the schools, I should say, and so how youth ministers can kind of incorporate their work into primarily Catholic schools, but also public schools, and that kind of hinges on another episode from season 2 called The Rock. Then recently, let's see, what was the one that just came out? Man, Mike, I recorded so many in advance. Now they're like coming out. I'm like,
it was the one that's titled. It was titled 1, 2, 3.
Oh yeah, no, Plan ABC.
Plan ABC. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, ABC.
Yeah, so that one, oh my gosh, I just kind of tell stories about how you have all these plans for youth ministry, and you have everything lined up: guest speakers, permission forms, parent chaperones, whatever you need. So many little details, and then the plan changes, and how you can go about like making these changes. And this has been a theme. And the reason why I did that one is because literally within like a week, I had so many changes to my plans, and I'm like, I'm doing a whole episode on this. I actually had something else, and I scrapped it, and I did that because it was just like coming to a head. I'm like, all right, I've got to do this one. And then I have one coming out on icebreakers, which is a really good one, and was inspired by one of my friends because he was giving a talk to a youth ministry group, and he's like, hey, they want me to do an icebreaker. I'm not good at this stuff. Can you like give me an idea? And I was like, yeah, well, here's like 5 different ones. He's like, you need an episode on this so I can watch it. I'm like, great idea, I will. So yeah, so it was fun recording some of those. And I'm narrowing down. I only have 2 episodes left of season 4 to record. And check it out. If you haven't checked out any of our Talking Catholic YouTube shows, there's 5 different ones now, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully there are 5 different ones.
4?
Well, we have what? 4 regular ones, and then we have 2 one-offs. Not one-offs, but 2 irregular ones that
here and there, kind of.
Yeah, we have 2 priests who are quite busy, but try to contribute as often as they can.
So we have Father Josh Nevin. Who's the other priest?
Well, we still have Father Adam Chehesky with the Vocations podcast or YouTube show. But that hasn't arrived in a little while. But I was just talking to him the other day, and he says, "Oh no, I got a plan for another episode."
So we have like 5 different, very different episode or series that have multiple episodes on each of them that are really great content for Catholics. Of course, mine is more geared towards youth ministers, but other ones are geared towards the lay people, geared towards growing in holiness. And check them out on Talking Catholic on YouTube.
Well, I have to really recommend Youth Ministry Insights for anyone who is a youth minister or knows youth ministers. There's not you'll see a lot of shows out there and podcasts and YouTube shows that talk about youth ministry, but yours, as far as I can tell, is the only one that's really dedicated towards youth ministers. It's very educational. Brings a lot of best practices to the forefront. So it might not necessarily. I mean, certainly youth can certainly watch it, but it's really about the ins and outs of youth ministry, which is, I think, there's stuff out there, but you tell it from such a real perspective, such an authentic perspective, that I think folks will get a lot of good information. I always get a lot of good information out of it, and I'm not a youth minister.
And you're not a youth minister. And I think, even if maybe you're a teacher, you work with youth and scouts or something, certain episodes you can even get stuff out of too, because I know you do a lot with your son, and you could probably, take some little pointers here and there. But it's just practical stuff. And it's funny, like when you first asked me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to come up with content for, 12 shows. Now we're here in season 4, and like I think I'm on my 35th or 36th show, and I'm like, this is getting just easier and easier. I'm just like, I don't even plan them out half the time. It's like, all right, whatever I'm going to say is going to come out, and it comes out.
And they're really digestible.
Yeah.
They're like, you're really good about keeping to our timelines.
Yeah, I try to.
Always less than 10 minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes tops.
Yeah, quick little clips, little snippets. So,
so it's a good thing. So if you've never seen their show, I highly recommend it. It's good stuff. And as she was just saying, if you work with youth in any capacity, it's definitely worth it. So that's a little crossover right there.
Woo.
But this is an episode all for crossovers.
We are about crossovers on today. Actually, we're calling it a podcast mashup.
That's right, because we have 2 award-winning podcasters with us today.
I know. I'm excited.
Now, people hear them on our feed all the time, so it's not necessarily a surprise, but we don't often get to have them in studio with us where we can pepper them with questions and see if we can stump them. So Kari, who's with us today?
Yeah, I am so excited because I've worked with each of them separately, but here we are on a podcast. So we have from Talking Saints, the podcast, Laurie Powers and Pete Sanchez. So hello, guys.
Hi. Good to be on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And this is well timed because this podcast will be releasing either the day of or the day after All Saints Day.
Yeah, so you can't beat that. Like we're going to talk about the saints
we need our saints
day,
experts.
or on the solemnity, we should say, and the saint experts are here.
I don't know about that.
I'm like, I need autographs.
We'll do our best. We'll do our best.
No. At Saint X, if you've won 2 podcasting awards for your show all about the Saints, you get to be labeled experts.
Yeah.
So whether it's deserved or not, it's a different story. But you guys get to be labeled that. So thank you very much for coming out late on a Thursday night. We're recording this as usual at Kari's home base here at Our Lady of Peace Parish in Williamstown.
I like it here. It's a little warmer than the vault.
It is a little warmer.
Yeah. And actually, we're sitting in a room surrounded with all saints, all different saints all around us. So we can literally have a whole podcast and just talking about the pictures on the wall right now.
If I had thought about that, I would have actually recommended that. We could have done it on those specific saints.
This is a lot less yellow too.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
You don't feel like you're claustrophobic, closed by a vault door.
Hey! We speak with the vault with love and affection, not with.
I've done 2 podcasts there, and I will never do them again. That's why you always come here, Mike.
It's a great room. I know what you people are talking about.
Yeah.
Almost actually every episode of Talking Saints, except for maybe a couple of Zoom ones, was recorded in the beloved vault. So.
Beloved, yes.
Yes. We were doing some in that little side room, Mike, for a few times as well.
So we could social distance.
That's right. That's a good point. So anyway, we're here on the saint to talk about some saints. I guess the first question that I know, Kari, I'm sorry to jump because I know you were thinking about asking this question is
good.
How did you come up with the idea for a podcast about the saints?
I think Peter did, so he should probably take that question.
I don't know. I guess I don't remember, Laurie. Honestly, you're too kind, but I guess I've always loved the saints since a young age. I remember being my namesake, St. Peter, at Queen of Heaven School, and carrying a cardboard key to the kingdom. So learning about him, and then kind of just being. And over the years, especially, there's been a lot of young saints I've been attracted to. Blessed Pier Giorgio Versati. A few years ago, got acquainted with him. And St. Catherine Drexel, a lot of, younger saints. But I don't know. I just love talking to the saints, and I've had the pleasure to know Laurie for over 10 years. She's a very good friend of mine. And when I had the idea, I don't want to take too much credit, but I guess I think Laurie, we just talked, and I was like, I think Laurie and I should do a podcast just to talk about the saints and tell their stories, share their lives, and
That's how it
that's
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Simple
don't know what
enough.
else there is to say.
And that was what?
Mike said
2
yes,
years
apparently.
ago?
I love good ideas. So
Almost
I
3
say yes
years
to
ago, I
everything.
guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for folks who don't know, I mean, the Talking Saints podcast is part of the Talking Catholic family, our multimedia empire, and
Empire?
Oh yeah, I like to refer to it as an empire.
That's a good. That's a good
Listen,
adjective.
It keeps getting added to, so I think empire is not too far off. But.
They're part of the Talking Catholic Empire.
No. I was trying to remember the plug I wanted to give it. When did the podcast comes out on specific days, but not ones that ever appear on a calendar. Like you can't really mark your calendar by
True.
it. So when
It's
did
a surprise podcast.
when do the episodes release?
On the feast day of the saint we are talking about.
That's
so
right.
so it does require a little planning on our part. We have to look at the calendar.
Yeah, very
find
little.
saints.
Because
And how do you
Each
do that? You
month.
just like find ones that you're attracted to? I mean, because there's so many.
Well, we've had a couple requests actually,
Yeah.
so that's fun.
That's kind of
makes
one of
it
the next
easier.
ones we're going to
email
do.
you or
Yes,
tell you?
one of my friends from college said, "Oh, my son is really into the. I think it was Saint Aloysius. So could you do one on Saint Aloysius? Like that's a little known saint. So yeah,
that's actually very fun.
And I'll give a shout out to my Aunt Rosa. She was telling me about her son, my cousin Javier. His girlfriend's name is Abby. And Abby is actually thinking about entering the church, Catholic Church. And she wants to know about St. Abigail. So that's kind of another one that's coming up down the loop. So
Spoiler alert. Get ready.
yeah, that's right. We're going to do St. Abigail in February. Can we say that?
I think so. Yes.
And
Yep.
St. Aloysius in the summer.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so yeah, you can mark your calendars for
those two.
Google search their
Well,
feast
no.
days and
Yeah,
then you
right.
go when they come out.
Well, and we can talk about the one that was just done. You did the last one was on
St. John Paul II.
Yeah.
Saint John Paul II.
My man.
You do have one in the can, as we like to say, for November. Who's that?
Saint Margaret of Scotland, I believe, who's
Yes.
not Scottish.
Oh,
There you go.
Yes.
Tune
You have to
in.
listen to the
Hear
episode.
her story. Yeah.
and what is her feast day? Do you recall off the
The
top of your head?
16th, I believe, of November. I think.
believe, yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. So so we got 4 you can look forward to
There you
if
go.
if you were writing all these things down. That's good. But the truth of the matter is, it's you guys do a great podcast, anywhere from 8 minutes to almost 30 minutes, depending on.
How long was Saint Margaret? I think she was a little short. Did you listen to that one yet?
No, I haven't, because we haven't gotten to it yet. But
That's short. Yeah.
St. John Paul II got almost a solid 30 minutes.
That's
mean,
true.
come
How could you
on.
not? We barely
He-
skimmed the
20, almost 27 years. A
I know
pope.
we were trying to distillate a lot. Into
How
that
can you not get you? He should have a whole hour.
Listen, these are the people who gave St. Nicholas 8 minutes, all right?
Well,
we were
listen,
just starting out.
There's not much that. He's more recent. He got all this content on him.
that is
People
true.
knew him personally.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe that's really the first question. So you talked about how you get recommendation, or how you have gotten recommendations, but in the beginning years, I think you're up to your 34th episode at this point.
Wow.
How did you pick on?
Just pick saints we liked. I'm pretty
Really?
sure.
What was your
so.
first one?
Oh,
you
that's a
know?
good
Remember?
question.
What was the first
Your first
was the
episode.
first?
Like, who was the first one that you said, all right,
I
we're going to
think
start with
It was
Saint.
I think the first one we recorded was probably St. Joseph, funny enough, right?
Maybe.
But the
be
first
appropriate.
one we actually that ran was St. Patrick. I do know
Okay.
that, March
Yeah.
17th.
Got some heavy hitters there.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, yeah, we just, and the thing is, I think we were reluctant. We didn't want to do we didn't want to talk about John Paul II.
Right away. Yeah, we put him
right
off
away.
a couple.
Yeah, we
Well,
wanted
you're going to be number
kinda
34.
Yeah,
so we can give you adequate time.
because I think I'm drawn to the random saints too. Like, I didn't know much about St. Philip Neri. So I was like, why don't we just, and Laurie, I'm sure that was with you too.
Yes,
You were
yeah.
curious about
We wanted to learn more
some
about
of them. We didn't
Yeah.
just want to do, hey, you know this one, this one. We wanted to, there was, for me at least personally, there was more sense of adventure not knowing those guys. That has been a real pleasure of this podcast. Is I'm kind of a history research buff, so I love diving in, especially stories I don't know, like St. Philip Neri, and being like, wow, this guy is pretty awesome.
And that's probably good for even the listeners to learn and hear. And I mean, it's just great. And then you're saving them the research too.
Exactly,
Which is people
yeah.
like me that don't like to do all that research. It's like, yep, I just hit play and I can hear all about it from Pete and Laurie.
right.
So doing all these episodes now, out of the 35 or so, what was your favorite one to record?
Ooh. I think my favorite one, because of how it turned out, was St. Thomas Aquinas, believe it or not, because he's very dry, and you would think, how can we talk about Thomas Aquinas? But he also was just completely in love with the Lord, and that comes through. And I don't know that we got too much into like the Summa or explaining the theology and his philosophy, but just who he was.
Yeah, you could have a whole course on that.
Yes. So we had good conversation about that.
How about you, Pete? Who's your favorite to record about?
Well, I'm a little biased because he was probably my saint before all of this. I love St. Ignatius of Loyola. He, just a powerful warrior. He pursued glory in one way, fighting battles. He pursued worldly glory. And then I'm a sucker for a good conversion story. I think I've written that before in the paper. But I just love it how his vanity changed into complete love of the Lord and so much humility, and he founded the Society of Jesus. And like I said, he's incredible. Just
nice.
I get emotional talking about him. It's crazy. It's awesome.
And the exercises have probably produced a number of saints too. The spiritual,
the stuff
exercises.
that he talks about, the Ad Majorem de Gloriam, everything for the greater glory of God. Or the Magis, the more, keep going higher. All these lessons. But Laurie, the spiritual exercises are amazing.
Yeah.
St. Ignatius is one of those unique saints in the sense that, and I've always wanted to ask somebody this question, so I might as well ask these two. So St. Ignatius seems world over like a beloved saint, one that people go to for guidance all the time. And yet the order that he founded seems to be quite divisive amongst a lot of Catholics, where that they find some difficulty embracing the Jesuits as an order. I'm curious, do either of you have sort of an insight into that? Without, I have no intention of being insulting to the Jesuits as someone who, like Pete, was trained by Jesuits. This is more of just a curiosity on my part, like this love for Ignatius, but a little less love for the Jesuits.
It might have something to do with the fact that they're pretty academic.
Okay.
So once maybe you get into that realm, you're going to see people maybe finding it easier to...
You mean like me, who loves academia?
To go off on their own path and maybe not stay as close to the church as they
That might be a way of looking at it.
That could be a possibility.
That's a very diplomatic way of saying that.
Yeah,
Laurie.
I mean...
I was like, how is she going to answer this?
But there are some, Jesuits who are, it's a range for sure. So,
it is. That is true.
And you have to just respect the fact that their formation, I believe, is 12 years.
Ooh,
so they,
It's no short period of time.
Right. So it's a commitment to become a Jesuit for sure.
That in itself is a lot.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The dedication to...
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious, as someone who appreciates the saints and understands religious orders, just something that's always been in the back of my mind. I think actually we did a disservice to Laurie and Pete when we were introducing them, because I don't think we told anybody their full-time jobs. Yes, they are in fact award-winning podcasters.
Their side gig. This is their side gig.
Yeah.
They actually work for the church too.
This is their unpaid side gig, I might add.
Mine too, by the way.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Hey, mine too.
Yeah,
That's true. You're here after hours for
That's
sure.
right.
You know it.
All right, Pete,
So-
what we got for you? What's your
full-time job, Pete?
I am staff writer and social media coordinator for the Catholic Star Herald newspaper.
The award-winning Catholic Star Herald newspaper.
Mike loves that.
I love when things get awards. And Laurie, what do you do
I'm
for
a
a
holy
living?
instigator at Christ the Redeemer Parish.
That is a great way of describing you.
My title right now, I believe, is Director of Faith Formation and Discipleship.
That's
So,
right.
yes.
So these are
I'm now
people.
working with the children too, so that's fun.
Ooh.
So these two don't just have a fascination with saints; they are experts in their field in terms of religious understanding.
Just trying to become saints
And
and
actually-
bring people with us, Mike. That's what we're trying to do.
And actually, Laurie just recently earned another little feather in her cap as well with her master's degree.
That's right. Yeah,
So
I forgot so quickly.
Where's your master's degree from, and in what?
Augustine Institute in theology with a concentration in Scripture.
So there is a possibility you are an expert in many things that we can discuss at any given time. That's good.
What
I
was
like
your
that.
undergrad? Was it in
No,
theology?
psychology
Oh, okay.
at a college that didn't even offer theology, which was kind of interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
There were, like every religion on the face of the planet was represented there. It was interesting. It was a
very
good experience.
interesting.
So because the students there, if they were embracing their faith, like they were doing it on their own. It wasn't, like the
Like-
parents didn't send them to a
Yeah.
Catholic college.
Was
so,
it a Catholic school?
No,
Oh, okay. Woof.
totally secular. Yeah.
That's good to know. I was getting worried there.
No, yeah.
So I guess you did that all online. Then,
I did.
guess
Well,
then,
I
too?
did get to go out. They do summer intensives, so
Oh,
I could go
nice.
out for a week and get a whole class in, and yeah, I think it took about 5 years though.
Colorado,
so,
right?
Yeah, Denver, outside Denver.
Very
Wow,
nice.
5 years. That's
think so,
no small
yeah.
commitment in itself. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
It's
On to the doctorate.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
It's kind of fun to have free time.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't pay me to go back to school.
I was actually, it's funny, I was actually just kicking around the idea of going back for my doctorate,
Good
as a matter
for you,
of fact.
Mike. Good
but
for you.
it will
Mike,
not
what?
be in sacred theology, however.
Oh, come on.
I was, listen, we all
you
have
learning all
gifts,
that?
Lori. That's just not one of
A
mine.
little study of scripture, a little theology in there somewhere. Come on.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of public planning, but but for the purpose of supporting the church,
yeah.
not
So,
necessarily for anything
Your
else.
heart's in the right place.
Yeah. It's just I know my limitations.
Mm-hmm.
The okay, but let's go back to the saints a little
Yeah.
bit because it's to be fair, it's not always the saints that you are doing the stuff about. You have done folks who are on the way to sainthood as well.
true.
You've had at least one blessed, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Maybe
did
two.
Did we do Père Giorgio?
Yes.
We
Probably
did.
the one that came. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in heaven. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I wasn't claiming anything to the contrary. But I'm curious, what made you choose Blessed Pierre?
Well, he was young. He's a young adult and just has great appeal, I think, for young people and has a pretty awesome story as
Well,
well.
here's what's
And he's
interesting.
recent, too.
And recent, too, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? How recent?
Like I
Early
wanna say-
1900s?
I was going to
yeah.
say he was even maybe 1970s, 60s, around that. I don't know. You know, you're the experts.
Didn't he die in 1925?
I know
That
there's
sounds
pictures
right,
of him,
yeah.
so I go by
Right,
when there's
exactly.
how clear the pictures were, and so I've seen pictures of him hiking. So I'm like, all right, cameras
clear
are kinda
metric.
Good.
That's a good
Yeah,
metric.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
No, Kari, that is a fantastic example, though, because I think for me, growing up, I learned about St. Paul, St. Peter. These saints just seem so distant because they were thousands of
Right.
years ago. But to see somebody who looked like he was just dropped into today's world, and you can see that clear image of him because St. Paul, St. Peter, we don't know what they look like. We have the mosaics, we have the
Stained glass windows.
thank you, stained glass windows, the icons. But it made it all the more tangible to see Blessed Pierre Giorgio. And I think for me, he was one of the first to actually, along with St. Catherine Drexel and a few others, but especially his youth and his vitality. He was always smiling. He was scaling mountains.
I know.
One of his favorite quotes, verso lauto, to the heights. And he made the joy of the gospel real, honestly. And I love it, Kari. What you said, you recognize him. You recognize him because you can see a picture of him and you see what he looked like, and it brings it so much closer. It brings the faith so much closer.
Yeah, I actually had the honor and privilege to pray by his tomb, by his where he is in Turin, when I was there in 2020. So I felt very close to him since then. It was just a very special moment, and so I think Laurie did a little research. When was he? When did he?
It was 1901 to 1925.
Oh,
so
look at Pete
yeah,
had it on.
very
Oh,
good.
Those
Peter.
are some good camera pictures then. They were-
Yeah, from that time period.
Yeah, I was, that's what I go by. I'm like, all right, Saint Therese, there's pictures of her.
That's right.
Padre Pio,
Oh,
Then we,
Padre Pio is another heavyweight.
Blessed Carlo Acutis. She's got the best
we got
photos out there.
videos. Yeah.
So that's how I always do the more modern saints. All right, is there a picture of them or not? Okay, we're looking in the 1900s or so.
And there's another one that was just named the 24th, Blessed Sandra Sabatini.
Yeah.
From Bologna, who died in 1984 at the age of 22, hit by a car, but was about to get married and she just another one to pray for. I would recommend looking her up.
Yeah, and that was just recently, earlier in this month. You said she was named. Blessed.
she was named Blessed. It was supposed to happen last year, but with the pandemic, pushed it to this year.
Mm-hmm. I guess this might be a good time to ask, why do we have saints?
Well,
where did the saints come from? I understand angels, but where do the saints come from?
The Master of Theology.
Yes, you get the Master of Theology.
Well, I always, when I'm teaching the kids, it's one of the first questions I ask. What is a saint? Because that's what God wants all of us to be.
Yes.
So these are the people that made it. They're
With the
in
capital
heaven.
S.
Capital S saints, yes. And even the lowercase to say that, they're there with the Lord. They persevered even through the challenges so they can be role models for us. And I always feel inspired when I read the lives of the saints. Sometimes it's intimidating, but I think we really have to ask, well, what does God want us to do? That was their particular call, especially some of those that embraced more harsh penances. I'm like, I don't think I could do that. And the martyrs,
don't forget them.
That's true. But yeah, if they did it, we can follow in their footsteps.
And I always talk about it too, because I work with youth. We all know this. And with the youth, like, do you have a baseball player you look up to that you want to be like? Do you have a basketball player or a movie star or somebody you emulate that does something that you like to do? This is who the saints are for us. Mm-hmm. They are our role models in the faith, though, which is not even just about this earth, living life on this earth, but it's about in heaven, being in heaven, and that they attained eternal life. So I always think about it that way, how, look up to these saints. If you're going to look up to a role model, look up to these saints. And that's, the whole purpose of picking a confirmation name and be close to that saint, somebody you admire and look up to. And so it's great. And then, to even make it even better, they all are a patron of something. So, okay, are you a hairdresser? Are you a firefighter? Who's your patron saint? So now you can even have something to look up to in the things that you're all about. So I often like to think, if I, God willing, one day, this is my life goal, is be a saint. What would I be the patron saint of? I always think about this. I'm like, all right, what do I want to be known for? And I always think, all right, youth ministers. Mm. For those of you who don't know, I think I mentioned it once or twice, but I run an entertainment company, a little side gig I do. And I walk on stilts, so stilt walkers.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no patron of youth ministers and stilt walkers?
I'm sure there's one of youth ministers. Okay. I always relate it to those that worked with youth or were youth. So St. John Paul II for me is my patron saint of youth minister. But I'm just saying, some overlap. So that's one of my things. And then the rest would be determined, how my motherhood goes, because I'm a mother of a 3-year-old, so maybe for motherhood. But I always think about that. How about for you guys? Have you ever thought about what you want to be known for? If I can
interject, I know what you're going to be named a saint for. You're going to be the saint of YouTube hosts.
There you go. All right. Saints are you. There's probably not that.
I guarantee you there's not one of those yet.
So,
listen, if you kick off before I do, I promise to get that started.
Can you rally for my cause?
You betcha.
All right.
Yes,
all right.
I will absolutely do that. No problem.
Listen, I picture my medal. I picture my prayer card. I really do think about this. But to do it, if you have a goal in mind, you got to
Well, that's just it. I was just going to say, you think about that, but you don't think of it in terms of vanity.
I try not to be all
it's literally the hope of being better than we are.
Yes. Yes.
And the desire to be a saint. Mm-hmm. Even though none of the saints ever, I don't believe anyway, ever desired to be saints per se. But, it's the kind of thing.
They just desired holiness. And that's
they just desired holiness. It's funny. So we talked recently about in the Diocese of Camden, we distributed bishops' medals recently to
really
a number of worthy candidates. And the thing that
wasn't it 75? It was a lot of worthy candidates.
There were a lot of worthy candidates. There were 75 of them, and every single one who responded back to me said the exact same thing. I am not worthy of this. This is not why I do this. But thank you very much for recognizing me.
Beautiful. So humble.
It is. And it actually made me very happy because we don't do it to make people none of us do this for the glory. We do it because we
love our Lord, we love our church, right. We love to serve others. Yeah. And that's honestly who the saints were. I mean, they truly did. They love our Lord, our church, and serving Him. And even under the craziest conditions, being a martyr, being probably the most, just giving up their life. You can't go any further than that. Yeah. It's incredible.
So let's talk a little bit about the process of becoming a saint, because it's actually there's there's the old way and the new way. The old way was, I actually don't know how the original.
You just rally for the cause.
Yeah,
You're like, they died, and you're just
Santo
like,
subito.
all right, let them be a saint.
That's right.
So a lot of the older saints, there wasn't necessarily a formal process to it. They were sort of named saints. Nowadays, there's actually a process, and no small endeavor, actually.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the process to become a saint?
So first, you would need to look into the person's life.
No, wait.
So
they have to die first.
They have to die, of course.
Yeah.
Step
Number one.
They have to be
one.
dead.
That's
You
right.
cannot be a saint while you're alive.
I think didn't Bishop ask that? He tells that story at confirmation. Like, you say, how do you become a saint? And nobody would answer. And eventually one little boy, you got to die.
Yeah.
Like, that's true.
True.
But
Step
yes,
one.
so after a person has died, I think there is a waiting period. I'm not sure. Is it 5 years?
5 years.
Before
But
you can
sometimes they waive
formally.
it. So they
yeah.
waived it in the case of, I think Saint Mother
Teresa?
Teresa
Yeah.
was waived, and I think Saint John Paul II
John Paul
might have been
II,
waived
yeah,
too.
I think
mean,
so.
come on,
I know.
really?
That's true.
We don't need to wait for these guys.
so with
Santo
most- with
Subito.
what-
I used to have a
yeah.
sticker on my car for when Saint John Paul II died. It said Santo Subito JP2.
Nice.
Like I got it. Like literally, those stickers were out like a
Really
week after
ready.
he died. Like, come on. Like so. Anyway, go ahead. It's a 5-year waiting period.
Typically, yeah. So for other people, other than Mother Teresa or John Paul II, but I think people probably start looking into their lives right away and talking to the people that knew them and gathering information because they have to have they have to verify that they lived a holy life and make sure there's nothing that's going to cause issues, I guess, when when people start looking into their lives.
Oh, yeah.
And then you would, typically they would write a prayer that you can ask for their intercession so that miracles can take place through their intercession. I believe is it 2 miracles to be beatified or just one?
I think
I think it's one.
It's one
I think
for
it's
the
two
beatification,
miracles to
one and
be
one now.
Canonized, yeah.
Okay.
But isn't it? It's venerable, blessed, and then saint, right?
Yeah.
Servant of God.
Oh, servant of God.
Servant of
Right.
God,
Yes.
venerable.
When the cause is open, servant of God.
Right.
Venerable, blessed saint.
Venerable would be when they determine that, yes, they lived a life of holiness, and now we're waiting for miracles.
Heroic virtues.
Yeah, heroic. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
What was the
Phrase.
word?
You're welcome. Heroic virtue. A life of heroic virtue. So actually, like you take a saint like Saint Padre Pio, and he could bilocate, stigmata, even these saints that have levitated. I'm not sure if Padre Pio levitated. Maybe he did. But these cool, things that they did through God, working through them. None of that matters. It's about their life of heroic virtue, how they lived it, living out the Gospels and all that. So even though they had these cool things from God, none of that really matters when it comes down to looking at their life. It's about how they lived their life for God.
Yeah.
In humility and love and charity, those kind of things. So those are important for them to be looked into. And they do a lot of research. I mean, there's a whole panel of people that interview people that knew them, interview family members if they're still alive. I know, and that process is going on right now for Servant of God, Maria Esperanza. And I know the vice postulator of the cause. He's a priest in our diocese, and about that process. And I know people that have been interviewed as part of that process for her to become a saint. So it's a pretty intense process and thought through. Sometimes even with some of these things like scientists are involved and other people that can kind of credit the things that they did or discredit it, for that. It's very, very intense, but it's good for a good reason. Because, we're going to give them this title and say we know they're in heaven, right? The scientists and even doctors and stuff come in when you start to go into the miracles, because the miracles have to take place. First, to become blessed, one miracle has to take place. Sometimes that could be a healing in some way. Most of the time it's like a healing, right? So we have to research that and make sure, okay, if this person has cancer, did they have all these chemo treatments and then they prayed to, this blessed or servant of God, whatever the title is that they're at. Was it the chemo that healed it, or was it, God through this saint, person that we want to call saint? So give this title of saint. So that's where it becomes very scrupulous. Is that the right word?
That's a good. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Scrupulous.
So looking very much intensely at it. So it's good. It's good. Our church doesn't, cross all the T's and dots all the I's to make sure things are right. And I think that's important in this process. So some things can go quicker along. And of course, Jesus said to St. Peter, what you bound on earth will be bound in heaven. You loose on earth will be loose in heaven. So we take someone like St. Mother Teresa, who only had one miracle, was only blessed, and they forwent the second miracle. And in the year of mercy, she was canonized a saint. So it can be changed.
Right.
Can I plug a book, actually, that's excellent about the saint process? There's a book on Father Emil Capone, who I don't Laurie, do you confirm? Is he a saint? He was a Korean War hero.
I think his cause is open, but I don't
His
think.
cause is open. Yeah, there's a great book that I read called The Saint Makers by Joe Drape, and he talks about inside the subtitle is Inside the Catholic Church and How a War Hero Inspired a Journey of Faith, and it goes through the process of the priests and a canon lawyer from Italy, and they were trying to piece together his life, Father Capone's life, and it's just a fascinating read. And I'm sorry, for the life of me, I'm not sure. I know his cause is open, but I don't know if he's blessed. I'm sorry, Father Emil. At least he lived a life of heroic virtue. I would recommend anybody pick up, because he's somebody who has a very fascinating story caring for the prisoners of war in Korea as a chaplain, and being...
He was a prisoner for himself.
He was a prisoner of war,
believe,
yeah. And he just...
Was this just open in the U.S.?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
he was
my
from,
friend that's at the United States Air
Midwest.
Force Academy was part of this. He was texting me about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
it just recently happened. Yeah. He was
And
he's
listen-
like, you got to go on YouTube and watch the mass. I was like, okay. I never did, though. Now I will, because we talked about it.
And I think you can be excused for not remembering the details of every saint that we bring up, because there is no shortage of saints.
no.
That's true.
Laurie, how many saints are there?
I have no idea.
I think it's like over 3,000
innumerable.
canonized.
Yeah.
Well, canonized, yeah. That would be-
Canonized. But then we got the little
little
S's.
Yeah,
saints.
well, that's the thing, is that it seems to me in the last several pontificates we've. Am I wrong? Does this seem like we've been
Cranking
cranking
them
out
out?
Oh, yeah.
saints a lot lately?
We just talked about that. I
we
think
did
John Paul II
Yeah.
canonized more
most.
than
Yeah.
more than most of his predecessors.
Did he ever
combined.
during his pontificate? Did he ever explain why he was canonizing so many, or was it ever talked about? Like, is there any explanation?
He did say, like, just to have role models, and particularly he was looking for lay people, married saints, so that everybody had someone to look up to.
Yeah. He really was cranking them out. But that's good, because, especially, like I said, the ones with the photographs, the more recent ones, like you said, Pete, earlier, like I always feel like sometimes so disconnected to some of the other ones. And I'm like, that's great, but life was so different then. But, now, I mean, and it's true. All of our call is to be a saint. St. Paul says it in his writing. We are called to be saints. And we mentioned that there's these canonized saints with the capital S, but look, everyone that makes it to heaven is a saint. And that's really the purpose of All Saints Day, is to celebrate, not just have a day that is not just for all the canonized saints, but also the unknowns of our church, the unknowns. And, every saint has a feast day, so they already have a day. So this is for like kind of collectively, like, when like, this is a kind of a bad analogy, but like, when your kid has a summer birthday and they can't celebrate in school, so at the end of the year they pick like a day, let's celebrate all the summer birthdays. Like that's what this is. I mean, it's kind of bad. It's like totally not on the same level, but you know what I mean? It's just like a day to collectively celebrate and to enjoy. I mean, it's a solemnity. That's the highest of the feast days. You can't get any better than that. So it's great.
I think Kari mentioned her favorite saint. I don't think we heard from Laurie and
Did
Pete.
I kind of did. I kind of just was like,
Didn't you?
I kind of like just, I have a couple. I didn't really give my favorite.
All right. Well, you could go on for 20 minutes. So we're
All
going
right,
to
Pete and Laurie, give your favorite saint.
We'll end with you. So Laurie, what is your, like,
Ooh.
I guess two questions. One, do you know who your patron saint is, and who's your favorite, who is your...
I sure hope you know your patron saint.
Yeah, of course I know. Who
You
my
work for the
patron
church. You
saints
better
are.
know yours.
I know what mine
When
is.
was your feast day?
Mine was, listen, first of all, my patron saint I knew before I ever worked for the church. I do not remember their feast day, but I'm sure Pete does.
Is it St. Michael?
No.
You're talking about him?
No.
Oh.
You
No,
mean your
well-
patron, your confirmation saint?
No.
What are you talking
my
about?
My patron saint is the saint for my current vocation. Saint, typically it's St. Martin...
You don't even know.
Martin de Porres?
No, not Martin de
St.
Porres.
Francis de Sales.
St. Francis de
Francis de
Sales.
Sales.
St. Francis
Very
de
good.
Sales has always been my patron saint.
I was thinking St. Michael.
St. Michael is one of my favorite saints, but no, the one that actually carries me through and reminds me
Got
that
it.
my duty is to the church and to the people
Got
is St. Francis de Sales. However, Laurie,
Yes.
who's your patron saint, and two, who's your favorite saint?
Oh, so my patron saint would probably be Saint Elizabeth. That's my middle name. So the mother of John the Baptist. So we don't know a whole lot about her, but we know she was there with Mary and with Jesus. So she had
a little jump in her stomach for
exactly.
Jesus.
Yeah,
She was like,
right.
when St. John
Which is a nice
John the Baptist jumped.
Exactly. Which is a nice segue to pro-life work, I guess, that I'm doing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the Visitation was the feast that I'm not sure if she has a feast day of her own, but Visitation for her and the Blessed Mother. So I usually celebrate that day. A favorite saint? Now that's hard to narrow down. There's so many. I think I have a team of people who are praying for me.
The Saint Squad, as we call it.
There you go. Yeah.
So your perspective on your patron saint is interesting, because I've always thought of a patron saint being whatever industry you're in or whatever your job focus is.
And I thought it was always your name or your confirmation.
Typically, yeah.
Oh, what
That's why I was like, St. Michael, Mike Walsh.
No, see, I always thought of it in terms of vocation.
Yeah.
I never thought of it in terms of like personal preference or anything. Like I have favorite saints, but the one that I keep my St. Francis de Sales.
Have you read any Francis de Sales?
I have.
Oh, excellent. He's an excellent writer.
He is. Unlike me, he's an excellent writer. So I've always appreciated that. What about you, Pete? Favorite? Who's your patron saint, and who's your favorite saint?
Well, patron saint, St. Peter. Remember having, as I said, the cardboard keys to the kingdom. He's fascinating because, again, I guess the whole theme of my favorite saints is conversion stories. And St. Peter was a guy who, there's a few gospel passages which I love. The one of him, he loved Jesus. And when Jesus was walking on water, Peter had that faith where for a moment he was doing the impossible. He was walking on water. It was only when his faith left him when he started drowning. So there was that. He might be the only person besides Jesus to ever walk on water that we know of. But then also he denied Jesus, and he was afraid. But then he became such a powerful force for evangelization after the resurrection. And so I love it. He's a first pope, the keys to the kingdom. He is the gatekeeper, so to speak, I guess, for the right. Am I?
That's a good way of putting it. Sure.
I'm just thinking of Ghostbusters now. Sorry, Halloween, one of my favorite movies, and I hear gatekeeper, and I want to say keymaster. But no. But probably my favorite saint is again another conversion story, Saint Paul.
Sure, of course.
He just thrown off the horse. Blinded, Saul became Paul, and Jesus said, "Why are you persecuting me?" And Paul became such a force of nature. And it's great because for the two of them, I only have to celebrate one day because they have the same feast day, June 29th. And you know what? I do, honestly, I feel a little bad for St. Peter. I'm sure he got up there and then Paul's up there in heaven and then God tells him, you're going to share the same feast day. Like, what? We're not going to have
mentioned
our own?
together, too. Churches are named after them.
Exactly. No, I mean, it's a good thing, but maybe they're not that prideful as I. God willing, if I'm a saint, wait a minute, I got to share it with that guy? No. But they were contemporaries. So I'm sure they were happy to, it's good for both of them, and I love both of them. So I was just making a joke.
You bring up a good point, though, about the feast day, and Laurie said about celebrating it, because we should celebrate on our patron saint's feast day. So, Mike, you need to find yours out, because you need to have a special treat on that day. Like my son's with John Paul on October 22nd, just recently, not too long ago, and I took him out. We did a special day. It's his. I said, "It's your feast day. We're going to celebrate." So. You kind of get gypped because you only get one. I'm like, I try to take at least two for mine because I have Anne's my middle name, and then I have Elizabeth as my confirmation name. So I always go double at least.
That's so weird. I picking my confirmation name, which was Luke, was
Good name.
Three reasons.
You just had your feast day.
I did, and I always appreciate it when it rolls around. It's always a surprise to me because I don't necessarily follow the feast days on my calendar, even though I have a great calendar for that. But that was always my favorite gospel, and the story the history of Saint Luke is kind of fascinating, and he specifically, once again, a doctor of the church. was communicating to the Gentiles specifically. Like he was the first one to write to that audience, which I've always had sort of a fascination with the idea of evangelizing, even though I rarely think of myself as an evangelizer. But
as you're producing a podcast that goes out to everybody.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. And then, of course, because my favorite dog's name was Luke, my grandmother's dog, and then I was a big Star Wars fan, so it all kind of worked.
It all came together for the good.
And then, in my case, it's St. Augustine is the other one because... Augustine? Is it Augustine is the preferred way of saying it? Then why do we all say Augustine?
I don't know.
Because we have the prep down here and everyone calls it St.
Augustine.
Augustine.
They all call it St. Augustine. So St. Augustine, always my favorite because anything about someone who could sin more than me and still make it to the sainthood it means a lot to me. So have I been able to read his book? No. 4 times now I've tried. Haven't been able to get through the first.
Maybe it could be like your little thing to do during Advent. It's coming up.
4 times it's not easy to read. It is an incredibly difficult read. But I keep trying because you're absolutely right.
Which book are we talking about? Confessions?
Confessions, yeah.
Okay.
I think I need a different translation of it because
more modern.
I think I need a more modern translation.
Like I sympathize with you. I'm the same way. I love St. Augustine.
Augustine.
St. Augustine. Darn it.
It's ingrained
I'm
in us.
never going to say it right. But I love, I think one of the things he said, Lord, make me a saint, but not yet. Yeah. Something along these lines. But with the confessions,
I rely on that statement a lot.
But I think with the confessions for me, I always get through the passage where he talks about stealing from the pear tree, and then I don't get past that. I would stop there.
It's worth it as the read.
But you know what? Speaking of saint books here, there's a lot of really great ones that are easy reads, like even little snippets each day. Mm-hmm. I tend to gravitate towards those. Like I'm not a big reader. So like if you want to learn about the lives of the saints or lives of a particular saint, sometimes they have devotional books that are just little quotes of them each day. I have one on Saint Mother Teresa, another one of my favorites, that I read each day. And it's just a little excerpt like that she's written or a story, and it's just a little something to chew on each day. So do you guys have any books like that, like devotionals or things that you could recommend that you've used for your prayer life?
I think I've probably read the same one that you're talking about from Mother Teresa. I forget what's the title of the one you're referring to. Do you remember?
I don't even know. It's so worn in my book. Okay. I just use it every day. But it was by it was given out. Brenda Quinn gave it out at the Collegium, so you probably have it. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What's your
Well, I have this one. I just picked it up. Father Alban Butler. I believe it's the same one who has the Butler's Lives of the Saints. I have this book here, Lives of the Saints for Every Day in the Year.
That's great.
And that's been really awesome because not only does it give a little biography of the saints, it gives a little reflection and prayer for each one. So you can go through 365 days of the saints.
Wow.
And I think, that this is the one I'd recommend at this moment.
That's a great book to have. I'll have to look up May 19th after this.
I got my Mother Teresa one.
Okay, go ahead.
Thirsting for God.
Yes.
Daily Meditations by Mother Teresa.
Thank goodness we all have our phones on us.
I know.
We can get this.
No, you know what? I actually somebody asked me because when it's the start of the month, I usually post on Instagram the monthly reflection, and somebody was like, "What book is that?" And I sent her a picture of it. So I actually didn't even Google. I just looked at the picture that I sent my friend because I knew I sent it to her recently, and there you go.
Okay, I have a bizarre question. Is there a least favorite saint? Is it possible to have a saint that you're just not fond of? Like, in all of your travels and all of your stuff, have you ever come across one that you went, I'm good?
Well, so for the longest time, I did not like St. Teresa, the Little Flower.
Really?
Because I know, hold on.
Saint.
I guess I picked up Story of a Soul when I was younger. And I'm like, I don't relate to this. Like, why is she whining? Like, everything's like a trial. I don't understand. And then later, actually, when I was in the convent, I opened it up again. I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And she's been chasing me since I went to St. Teresa's school. So since kindergarten.
You worked at St. Teresa
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, my.
So, and I even went to, I think it was after that, I went to the novena. Like, I love her now. She's probably one of my favorites. But yeah, that was a story where I couldn't relate to her. I didn't get it, but it was probably just not the right time.
Well, you know what? That's a great segue because I've often had a theory that our appreciation for saints changes. I think depending where we are in life and our moment in life, and then it's perfectly fine to gravitate away from one and towards another. If you're at the point in your life, you know?
But you almost kind of segue from that. something Laurie said too, is that they do find you.
That's
You
true.
said that St. Teresa's been chasing you down, but like the saints will try to grab your attention throughout your life at different times for different needs. So, St. Teresa has been trying to get your attention.
Yes.
It's just a matter of us turning our will over to it and saying, all right, I'm going to open this book again and
Right.
look a little bit more into it.
Can I mention, this isn't a saint per se, but it's a biblical passage, the parable of the prodigal son. Actually, no. I'm going to, not that one. I could go to the prodigal son, but I want to go to the Mary and Martha story. And I forget who was, Kari or Laurie, back me up. There was one that was
Wait,
cleaning.
why are you not asking me to back you
Or
up?
like, well, would
No,
you-
that's not going to happen.
no,
Martha was the busy one.
Martha was the busy
Yes.
one, and Mary was the one who sat with the Lord. I think for me, sometimes I would be the busy Martha, trying to get work done. And I think when I was younger, the priest would say, and I'd be like, Martha, she's the one doing all the work, and Mary's the one that is just not doing anything. I guess that I just disliked Mary, unfortunately. Now, of course, I understand it. The story about trying to surrender ourselves to the Lord and rest and be in His presence instead of worrying about so much. But yeah, there was that, and then the prodigal son. I didn't understand the.
That's always hard. You're like,
That is
come
tough.
on, this is not fair. This is not fair. So I feel you. I've struggled with that myself. Like, but you know what? God's trying to teach us so much through that. It's like and as He does with all the lives of the saints, it's just He truly has given us a great witness by all these different holy men and women who have shown us the way, and that's beautiful. I don't know. It's funny you said dislike. For me, it's like what you gravitate towards and what you don't.
Right.
So I tend to gravitate more towards like the ones that do work that I do, that live a life like I like the modern ones. I like the photographs as I mentioned earlier. So I tend to not gravitate towards some of the ones from the Middle Ages and all that. For me, like people love Saint Joan of Arc. I'm like, she's okay. She was cool.
Wow. She was pretty wild.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
you
It just
read
doesn't
her,
do it for
yeah.
me. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. What about you, Mike? Who don't you?
I'm not sure that I have. Well, I guess all of them. I don't know. I will admit here on the podcast in the 51st minute, even though I do have an appreciation for those few saints that I mentioned, I can't say that I have an over. I've never been drawn to the saints. This goes back to, we've discussed this before, Kari, that I seem to lack an appreciation for the mystery of the church, whereas I tend to fall more into the service of the church, which is why I have such an appreciation, I guess, for Martha as opposed to Mary in that parable, or story rather. I don't know, but I appreciate the fact that they are there, and I appreciate the fact that it's so weird. I can't even tell you that I've ever prayed to a saint. Not even if I
You don't pray to them, so that's good.
I've never utilized
You've
a
proved them
saint
through their
to
intercession.
pray for me or whatever, however we describe it. Even if I've lost something around the house, I've never.
Poor Saint Anthony.
I know. I've never. I couldn't even tell you what the difference between St. Anthony and St. Jude. And all I know is St. Joseph, you're supposed to bury upside down in the yard if you're trying to sell your house.
Not supposed to do that, Michael. Don't
Mike.
do that.
Mike is a heretic.
I would
is
like
a
to point out I have
superstitious
never
practice.
done that.
Actually, I read a little history on where it came from, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that actually kind of makes a little sense now. So I was excited about it.
That there was a reason for
There
burying
was
St.
like a
Joseph.
traditional reason behind it. What it was, I forget
okay.
now. But at the time of reading it 2 years ago, when I was going to sell my house and I brought it, and I was like, let's look into this a little bit more.
And they made the decision not to bury it.
Well, we made the decision not to sell our house, so we never had to bury it anyway.
There you go.
So God saved us, divine
Yeah.
intervention. But yeah, it's
And actually, that is a good point. We should probably hit that one more time. We do not pray to the saints. We
ask their help, and
we
that's
ask
why
for
we
their
know
help.
that they're saints, because they're with God and they're interceding across from heaven. And that's part of the miracle. Is that okay? We know this miracle can happen because if they're not in heaven, they're not going to be asking God to allow it to happen.
Right.
So because of that, they've allowed it to happen. God has allowed it to happen because they were asking, and because they were asking, they were in heaven with God. So that helps.
And people say all the time, well, why wouldn't you just pray to God? Well, why would you not use another tool in the toolbox?
Why do
Exactly.
we pray for each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, am I supposed to do that?
Yes.
Tonight.
Well, it's. I found something interesting from St. Thomas More, who had actually talked about why we should pray to the saints. He talked about, what need, if you're not going to pray for us, or you're not going to, if you say you see no reason why we should pray to the saints, well, then what need do you have to ask any physician to help your fever or any surgeon to heal your sore leg? Kind of because the Lord is there, God is there. But I think it's a little boost, I think, to pray to them for their intercession.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And as we wrap up the podcast, I would encourage all of our listeners to check out your podcast, Talking Saints, randomly throughout the year. But always can be found on our Talking Catholic website, talking.catholicstarherald.org. You can go to the Talking Saints page and find all of their stuff. So Laurie and Pete, thank you so much for joining us today. And Kari, thank you for hosting us today. And to our listeners, thank you very much for checking us out today. And we will see you all again next week. See ya.
Happy All Saints Day. God bless.